Today's story begins with a phone call. It's the story of how a call from my ex-mother-in-law 3 months after my divorce shook my life to its core and brought everything from an atrocious past back into focus. If you find this story compelling, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Your small support means a great deal to us. On a peaceful Sunday afternoon, the phone's chime broke the silence. I was sitting on my balcony with a cup of hot herbal tea and honey in my hands, lost in the pages of a book I'd left half read. It was a sense of peace, so foreign I hadn't dared to dream of it for the past 5 years. My cell phone screen lit up, showing an unknown yet eerily familiar number. I frowned, hesitated for a second, and swiped to answer. "Hello?" An ex-mother-in-law's voice, sharp and frantic, hit my eardrums, mixed with the sound of ambulance sirens and people shouting. "Aria, get down to Metropolitan General Hospital right now. Marcus has been in a car wreck. It's serious. The doctor says they need to operate immediately, but we need $35,000 for the deposit. Bring the money fast and save your husband. If you don't hurry, it'll be too late." I froze for a moment. That voice, that arrogant and commanding voice, I'd recognize it even if I were dust and ashes. It was my ex-mother-in-law, Ms. Helena Vance. But wait a minute. Your husband? What was she talking about? I set the teacup down on the table, and it rang with a slight chime. I took a deep breath, hoping the soft aroma of the tea would calm the pounding in my heart, rattled by the surprise. And then I burst out laughing, a light laugh tinted with mockery, but charged with a contempt that reached the sky. "Excuse me, I think you have the wrong number," I replied, my voice so serene it was glacial. "Or maybe your age is affecting your memory." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then a louder scream exploded, as if she meant to shatter the phone's speaker. "What are you saying? I am your mother-in-law, Marcus's mother. Your husband is bleeding to death in the emergency room. You are his wife, so get the money and save him." $35,000. The figure that tumbled from her mouth sounded as light as a feather. Did she consider me a money-printing machine? Or did she still think I was the same naive, oppressed Aria of 3 months ago? I stood up and walked to the railing, watching the people rushing about their errands below. The evening breeze ruffled my hair. I felt the aroma of freedom, a freedom won with blood and tears. "Miss Helena," I said, calling her by her name, no longer using the old title of Mother Vance. "I believe you should take some memory vitamins. It has been 3 months since the judge finalized the divorce. Your son, Mr. Marcus, and I are nothing to each other anymore. Why should I care if he lives, dies, has an accident, or is sick for you to ask me to bring $35,000? By what right? And who are you to ask me?" On the other end of the line, her frantic breathing was clearly audible. She must have been in shock, perhaps surprised that her submissive ex-daughter-in-law dared to talk back, or by my coldness, or perhaps because she realized her illusory authority had vanished like a soap bubble. "You, how dare you speak to me like that? Despite everything, you shared a bed for years. There is a measure of affection. He is my son. Can you just stand by and watch him die? You heartless woman, I'm going to tell everyone your true colors." She began her usual string of threats and emotional blackmail. I smiled. Now it was a smile tinged with a little of the bitterness of the past. Affection? You dare mention that word to me? Did you think of affection that stormy night when you and your son kicked me out of the house? Did you think of affection when your son hit me until my face was bruised for defending his young mistress? Did you think of affection when, during the divorce proceedings, you encouraged him to hide all our assets so I would leave empty-handed with a young daughter? I paused, swallowing the bitter knot forming in my throat. It felt like the heart wounds I thought had healed were bleeding again under her fingernails, but it no longer hurt. It just seemed ridiculous. "Ms. Helena, I heard your son is about to get married again, isn't that right? To that Savannah, so beautiful and smart, they say she's from a good family and carries the grandson you long for in her womb. Why don't you call her? She has a lot of money. Ask her to bring the funds to save her future husband. Don't be ridiculous by calling the ex-wife." The other side of the phone fell into silence. Only her ragged breathing and the chaotic hospital noise could be heard. I must have hit a nerve. Something must have happened to that magnificent future daughter-in-law for her to swallow her pride and call me, whom she considered trash. "Savannah, that girl—" Ms. Helena's voice suddenly cracked, losing all its strength and arrogance. "That girl disappeared with all the money. I beg you, please, just this once, save Marcus. I'm pleading with you." "I'm sorry, but I am neither a saint nor a charity bank. Those $35,000 are for raising my daughter. Yes, that same granddaughter you once called a useless girl. I'm hanging up." I pressed the end call button firmly. The screen went black, and the endless beep seemed to cut the last thread binding me to that hellish family. I slumped back into my chair. My hands still trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the long-suppressed anger now emerging. It had only been 3 months since I walked out the door of that suburban mansion. They must have thought I was dying in some miserable rented room, that I would crawl back on my knees to beg for their affection. But life is unpredictable. Today's Aria was no longer yesterday's Aria. And Marcus, the man who betrayed me for another woman, now lay there waiting for death, abandoned by that very mistress, Karma. It sounds like an ethereal word, but is there any other that, at this moment, manifests more clearly and cruelly in reality? I took a sip of the herbal tea. The sweetness of the honey and the slight bitterness of the infusion mingled on my tongue. I remembered the day 5 years ago when I first stepped into Ms. Helena's house as her daughter-in-law. Back then, I too naively believed in the word family. I dedicated my whole heart, my money, and my youth to that home. And what did I receive in return? Vile betrayal and a cruel calculation that chilled me to the bone. Can you believe it? I, who was earning $5,000 a month, had to hand over my entire bank account to my mother-in-law, and every morning I received barely $15 for groceries. A wife who gave everything for her husband, unaware that he was secretly cheating on her for 2 years inside that very house. And the height of shamelessness? They tried to sell me out to get money to support the mistress. The story of my life, my tear-filled marriage, and my dazzling transformation to take revenge in the most civilized way has only just begun. What Ms. Helena just said on the phone is only the tip of a giant iceberg. Why has Marcus ended up in this situation? What is the true identity of the mistress, Savannah? And what did I do to make them face the music? The cup on the table had already cooled, but the bitter aftertaste of the call still permeated my tongue, every corner of my memory. I closed my eyes and surrendered to the evening breeze. Time rewinded 5 years, to the day when I, at 25 years old, full of faith and love and vitality, happily entered Ms. Helena's house, dressed in an immaculate wedding gown. That day, everyone said I had married well. My then-husband, Marcus, looked intellectual and peaceable, and was the only son of a family with a suburban mansion in a nice area of Atlanta. I, though from a small town in South Carolina, had graduated with excellent grades from a prestigious university and worked as a marketing director with a salary everyone envied. But in the eyes of my in-laws, I was nothing more than an ambitious newcomer. As the saying goes, you don't know there are roaches until you move in. That seemingly perfect house was actually a suffocating prison that trapped my youth and my freedom. On our wedding night, without even having unwrapped the gifts, Ms. Helena called me into the living room. Sitting in a carved mahogany chair, she handed me a paper full of family rules with an impassive face. "Aria, it's a great blessing that you've entered our family as a daughter-in-law. I will tell you beforehand how you must behave. There are only a few of us in this house, and Marcus's father passed away early, so I raised my son alone. That's why I cannot stand to see my son lose out. Starting this month, I will manage both of your salaries, yours and Marcus's." I was stunned and stammered. "How? But Mother Vance, we are adults. We want to manage our money, handle our expenses, and save." "Save what?" Ms. Helena cut me off with a sharp voice. You young people, as soon as you have money, you spend it foolishly. I manage it for your own good. When you have an important need, I will give it to you. Or are you worried that I will keep it? Marcus agrees. A wife must obey her husband. I looked at my husband, hoping he would defend me, but Marcus kept his head down, peeling an apple. Leave it to my mother, honey. She will do better than you. Don't be so calculating with my mother. His words were like a splash of cold water, but since I was a newlywed and wanted to live in peace, I swallowed my tears and handed over my bank account. And that was the beginning of my conversion into a well-paid servant without a salary. Every morning before going to work, I had to get up at dawn to clean the spacious 4-floor home and go to the market to prepare breakfast. Ms. Helena was very demanding. The broth for the stew had to be made with bones from the night before, and the greens had to be washed leaf by leaf. Afterward, I rushed on my motorcycle to the office, where I worked frantically under the pressure of being a team lead. In the evening, when my colleagues suggested going to a spa or a coffee shop, I had to rush home to be on time for dinner. Marcus, upon returning from work, would sit on the sofa with his legs crossed, watching TV, waiting for the table to be set. Ms. Helena would return from her exercise class and complain about any speck of dust on the staircase, or if the soup was bland or too salty. The most humiliating thing was the money issue. My salary was $5,000. Marcus's was $2,500, and everything was in Ms. Helena's safe. Every morning, she gave me exactly $15, $5 for my lunch and commute, and the other $10 for the evening dinner groceries for 3 people. Manage it well, and don't waste it on foolish things, she warned me, looking at the bills as if she feared I would steal from her. $10 for dinner for 3 people in an expensive city like Atlanta. I had to rack my brain, go to the farmer's market early in the morning, and haggle for fish or vegetables. Some days, to buy a chicken for a good broth for my husband, I skipped lunch and filled my stomach with water to offset the expense. Once, I needed a dress for the company Christmas party. I opened the closet and only found old college clothes. I mustered my courage and asked Miss Helena for $250 for a new dress. She looked at me as if I was asking her to rob a bank. A dress to seduce who? You're already married. Just wear anything. $250 is some people's entire grocery budget for a month. Don't be so wasteful. I felt so humiliated that I ran to my room crying and complained to Marcus. He, who was playing a video game, frowned, annoyed by hearing me. Don't make such a fuss over a dress. My mother is right. Stop being so shallow. You look fine to me even in your pajamas. At that moment, I realized my husband was not only a weakling, but also cruelly insensitive. He was used to his mother's protection and took my servitude for granted. In his and his mother's eyes, I was nothing more than a money-making machine and a domestic robot without desires or feelings. I considered divorce then, but 2 clear lines appeared on the pregnancy test. The baby, who arrived at the most desperate moment, became the rope that tied me to that hell. I consoled myself. Come on, hold on a little longer for the baby. When the grandchild is born, Ms. Helena will change and Marcus will mature. But I was wrong. My silent sacrifice, far from being respected, was ruthlessly trampled upon with the appearance of a third person. She entered and shattered the facade of false family happiness. When my daughter Zola turned 2 years old, there was a small change in Marcus's work life. He was promoted to section chief. His salary didn't increase much, but dinners with clients and meetings with partners became frequent. I started noticing a strange change in my husband. Marcus worried more about his appearance. He put on cologne every time he went out, and, most importantly, he never parted with his cell phone. He changed the password, always left it face down, and often went out to the balcony in the middle of the night to speak in whispers. My woman's intuition alerted me to a bad omen, but every time I asked him, Marcus denied everything. Stop being so suspicious. I have enough stress at work without you interrogating me like a cop at home. Where am I supposed to relax? Ms. Helena, seeing our arguments, always took her son's side. He works himself to death out there to support you and your daughter, and you get jealous like a child. A jealous woman is the dumbest kind. Once again, I swallowed my rage and remained silent. Until one day, while Marcus was showering, I casually saw a message pop up on his lock screen. "Honey, come over tonight. I miss you. Our baby misses his daddy too." The sender was Savannah Secretary. I felt the world crumble. Our baby. It meant Marcus had another child. With trembling hands, I secretly unlocked the phone. Fortunately, the night before, I had seen him enter the password. What I saw were countless sappy messages and intimate photos of Marcus with a young, pretty, and sexy woman. She was the new secretary of an associated company, and her name was Savannah. But what plunged me into despair were not the whispers of love, but the bank transfer records. "Honey, send me $100 for the vitamins. Gotta take good care of our air." "Love, what a beautiful Chanel bag. It only costs $4,000. Buy it for me, okay? I'll ask my mother for some money and send it to you." My legs went weak. The salary I earned with the sweat of my brow and gave to my mother-in-law was not being saved, as she claimed. It was being given to Marcus, and Marcus was using it to support his mistress. An even more terrible fact was revealed when reviewing old messages. A conversation between Marcus and his mother. Marcus: "Mom, Savannah had an ultrasound. The doctor says it's a boy, 90% sure, your grandson." Ms. Helena: "Really? Oh, what a blessing. Well done, son. Take good care of her. You don't know how tired I was of Aria only giving me a girl. For now, don't tell Aria anything. When Savannah gives birth, we'll see. If you need money, tell me. We can support my grandson with Aria's salary." I dropped the phone on the bed. The sound was like my heart shattering. This family was an organized band of scammers. The woman I had called my mother-in-law and cooked for 5 years was an accomplice to her son's adultery. Far from preventing it, she was using the money earned by my sweat to raise the fetus in her son's mistress's womb. All because of that antiquated and cruel patriarchal mindset. She had never bought my daughter Zola, her blood granddaughter, a single carton of milk or a piece of candy. She despised her, calling her a useless girl. But for the unborn son of a stranger, she was willing to support him even at the cost of scamming her daughter-in-law. Hate, rage, pain. All negative feelings churned in my chest until I was breathless. I wanted to run to the living room and tear the disgusting masks off that pair, but my businesswoman's rationality stopped me. If I caused a scene now, what would I gain? Marcus would deny it, or, in the worst case, he would leave with his mistress. Miss Helena would join him in throwing my daughter and me onto the street. The properties were in their name or Marcus's, and I didn't have a single penny. I would lose everything and start a life of hardship. Calm down. You have to make a plan. You have to get this rotten family out of your life and take back what is yours. I wiped away my tears. I put the phone back where it belonged and tried to calm my breathing. Marcus came out of the bathroom, whistling. I continued folding the child's clothes, with a face as serene as a lake before a storm. "Are you finished showering? Are you having dinner at home tonight?" I asked sweetly, as if I knew nothing. "No, I have to see a client with the boss today. I'll be late. You two have dinner," Marcus said, as he combed his hair and put on cologne. Now I knew that cologne was for another woman. "Okay, be careful." As I watched Marcus's back disappear behind the door, my sweet smile faded. In its place appeared a sharp gaze. "Enjoy it while you can. These will be your last happy days. Now that I know the truth, the price you will pay will be higher than you can imagine." In the following days, I began to secretly investigate Savannah. Who was she? Why did she take an interest in an indecisive man with a modest salary and full of pretensions like Marcus? And most importantly, I discovered that Marcus and Ms. Helena were plotting a terrible conspiracy to snatch away the only property I had, a plot of land my parents had given me as a wedding gift. What did they intend to do with that land? And how did I manage to turn the tables and use their own trick against them? Would the truth about the male grandchild and the mistress, Savannah, be as simple as they thought? Since that fateful night when I discovered the secret on my husband's cell phone, I lived like a ghost in that house. On the outside, I was still the obedient daughter-in-law. I went to work, prepared meals, but inside, my heart was cold and full of suspicion. I knew that this false peace was only the calm before a great storm, and that storm, sooner than I thought, came not from the mistress, but from the endless greed of mother and son. One weekend evening, Ms. Helena, unusually, went into the kitchen herself to prepare my favorite dish, a rack of lamb stew. She served me a plate with kindness, and her smile was so sweet it gave me chills. Marcus, sitting next to me, was also strangely affectionate, constantly asking if my work was too hard. After dinner, Miss Helena called us into the living room. She served a cup of tea, cleared her throat, and began to speak. "Arya, Marcus has been doing well at work lately, and a good opportunity has come up for him to invest with some friends and open a chain of restaurants, but he lacks some capital. That's why I was wondering if you could help your husband." I took a sip of tea, hiding a smile. "How could I help him? Since you manage all my salary, where would I get the money?" Ms. Helena hesitated for a moment and then went straight to the point. "Your parents gave you a plot of land by the highway as a wedding gift, right? I heard its value has increased a lot. Go home and convince your parents to sell it. With that money, we can finance Marcus's business. If your husband does well, it will ultimately be good for you, won't it, Marcus?" Next to her, he supported her, his eyes shining. "Yes, honey, it's a unique opportunity. Sell it. I promise I'll pay you back in 2 years. When I make money, I'll buy you a plot of land twice as big." I looked at mother and son with absolute contempt. That land was my last refuge, the property my parents had bought with their life savings for their retirement, and they dared to ask me to sell it. In reality, thanks to spying on Marcus's phone and eavesdropping on Ms. Helena's calls, I already knew what business opportunity they were talking about. There was no chain of restaurants. The truth was that Marcus had gotten into huge debt from gambling and sports betting. The debt amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the loan sharks had threatened to break his legs if he didn't pay. Furthermore, the mistress Savannah was threatening to abort his precious son if he didn't buy her a luxury apartment to spend her pregnancy quietly. Marcus and Ms. Helena were between a rock and a hard place. They couldn't sell the house they lived in so as not to lose their reputation with the neighbors. So they had set their sights on my only property. They intended to fleece me out of every last dime to support the mistress and pay off gambling debts. "That land is in my parents' name. I have no right to sell it," I replied coldly, setting down the teacup with a decisive gesture. Ms. Helena's face hardened, and her smile vanished. "Well, you go and butter up your parents. You are their only daughter. Who else are they going to give it to if not you? Does it hurt you to give it to your husband? Is his business at stake?" "Business or a load of debts?" I asked casually, looking directly at Marcus. Marcus flinched and spilled his glass of water. "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm a serious businessman. What debts?" "All right," I said, feigning a sigh and standing up. "I'll think about it. It's an important decision. I can't decide right now." I walked to my room, leaving the mother and son sitting with dissatisfied looks. That night, I heard an argument coming from Ms. Helena's room. "Mom, look how stubborn she is. If she doesn't sell the land, I'm dead. The loan sharks told me to pay next week, and Savannah is threatening to leave." "Don't worry, I'll take care of her. If it doesn't work the easy way, we'll have to do it the hard way. She lives in our house and we have her daughter. Where is she going to go? If we pressure her, she'll eventually give in." Upon hearing those cruel words, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. They didn't see me as family, but as prey. I had to act before they did. The next day, I took the day off secretly. I gathered all my important documents and the land deed I had hidden and deposited them in a safety deposit box at the bank. And to have evidence, I installed a small hidden camera in the living room. But I couldn't imagine that their cruelty would go beyond asking me for money. It was their greed and lust that brought the tragedy to its climax and caused that fateful stormy night I will never forget. One Friday afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Marcus hugging a woman around the waist, entering a luxury downtown hotel, and a provocative message. "Little sister, your husband takes very good care of me and our baby. You just stay home and cook, okay?" The sender was none other than Savannah. She was provoking me. She wanted me to lose my temper and leave on my own, clearing the way for her to move into Ms. Helena's house. My blood boiled. I couldn't take it anymore. I left my daughter with my mother and took a taxi to the address in the photo. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to end this farce with a three-way confrontation in front of room 302. My heart was pounding. I took a deep breath and knocked. "Who is it?" Marcus's voice, with a hint of alcohol, was heard. "Room service." The door opened. Marcus, wearing only a towel around his waist, had a flushed face. Inside, Savannah, wearing a thin nightgown, was lying on the bed, gently stroking her slightly protruding belly with a triumphant expression. Seeing me, Marcus turned pale and froze. "Arya, what are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I walked into the room and stared at Savannah. She didn't seem scared at all. On the contrary, she smiled and slowly sat up. "Hello, Arya. How timely. Marcus just promised to buy a house for me and our baby." "Marcus," I said, turning to my husband with a voice trembling with contained anger, "where are you going to get the money to buy a house for that woman? From the money from the sale of my parents' land? Or from the money you've been stealing from my salary all these years?" Marcus looked alternately at Savannah and me, not knowing what to do. Savannah curled her lips. "Don't be so harsh. He's the precious heir of this family. What's wrong with spending a little money? I'm giving it to him instead of you, who can't even have sons. You should be grateful to me." "Grateful?" I laughed bitterly. "Grateful to you? A woman who steals husbands and bleeds them dry? Do you think he loves you? He's just using the child you carry in your womb to get money from his mother, and you're only interested in his money. You deserve each other. How disgusting!" "Shut up!" Marcus suddenly yelled, lunging at me. "How dare you insult Savannah? She's carrying my son!" "Your son? Are you sure it's your son?" I spat out the doubt I had harbored for a long time. That sentence was the fuse to the bomb. Savannah started screaming and throwing a fit. "Honey, she's cursing our baby. She wants to kill our son. Hit her!" Marcus, blinded by alcohol and the urge to protect his mistress, raised his hand without hesitation. A dry sound and a burning sensation on my cheek. I staggered and fell, hitting my head against the corner of a table. Blood started to flow. I looked at the man I once called my husband. He was standing with clenched fists and bloodshot eyes, without a trace of remorse. "Get out of here! Get out of my sight, you witch!" Marcus roared. I got up, staggering, and wiped the blood from my forehead. I looked at Savannah, who was smiling triumphantly, and at Marcus, as fierce as a beast. It no longer mattered. My tears had dried up. "Fine. I'm leaving. I leave this garbage to you. I hope you're happy in your filth." I rushed out of the hotel and took a taxi straight home. I had to talk to Ms. Helena. I held a small hope that, although greedy, she was still a mother and a grandmother. I thought that if she knew her son had hit his wife for a mistress, she might have some conscience left. But I was completely wrong. When I arrived home, it was pouring rain. I entered the living room, soaked and with blood on my forehead. Ms. Helena was watching TV and was surprised to see me. "What happened to you? Are you crazy? What do you look like? Are you going to embarrass the family?" "Mother Vance," I said, my voice trembling. "Marcus is cheating on me. He hit me. He was supporting that woman with the family money." I expected her to be surprised and ask me what had happened. But no. Ms. Helena took a sip of tea without taking her eyes off the TV and said coldly, "I know." I froze. She knew. She knew and did nothing. She encouraged her son to be unfaithful to me. Ms. Helena turned to me with a look of contempt I will never forget. "What's wrong with a man having a little fun outside the house? The important thing is that Savannah is going to give us a son. She's smart and nice. What have you done for this house in all these years? Only giving birth to a girl, being stingy with money, and refusing to sell land to help your husband. You are a useless daughter-in-law. Mother Vance! Don't call me mother-in-law. It gives me the chills. She stood up and pointed to the door. Marcus called me. He says you behaved rudely and insulted his girlfriend. We don't need a daughter-in-law like you in this house. If you have any decency, disappear from my sight right now. That way, I can bring Savannah in. I won't let my precious grandson be raised on the street. Are you kicking me out in the middle of the night? I asked, trembling. Get out now, or you'll make a scene here. Having said that, she rushed into my room, forcefully stuffed some of my clothes into an old suitcase, and threw it out into the yard. Out! And don't even think about taking anything from this house. You say Zola is with your parents? Well, let her stay there. We won't raise a useless girl in this house. I stood in the middle of the yard under the cold, pouring rain. The blood from my forehead mixed with the water. My suitcase was thrown into a puddle. The heavy door slammed shut in front of me, cutting off all affection and hope. I looked up at the imposing 4-story house, the place where I had invested 5 years of my youth, cleaning every brick, cooking every meal. Now it had become a cold fortress that rejected me. That stormy night, dragging the heavy suitcase, I stumbled out of the familiar alley. I didn't look back. I knew I had just escaped from hell, hurt and humiliated, but I had survived. And I swore to heaven that those who had thrown my daughter and me onto the street that night would pay for it. I hailed a taxi, returned to my parents' house, hugged my daughter, and cried uncontrollably. After that stormy night, I returned to my parents' house with a broken body and a wounded heart. My parents, seeing their haggard daughter and confused granddaughter, were devastated. My father, a peaceful man all his life, banged the table and shouted, "Divorce him right now! Don't we have a plate of food for you and your daughter in this house? Don't have any consideration for those ungrateful people." Thanks to my parents' support, the next morning, I filed for divorce. I thought everything would end quickly and we would all go our separate ways, but I underestimated the cruelty of Ms. Helena and her son. For them, divorce was not the end of a relationship, but the last chance to fleece me out of every last dime before expelling me from their lives forever. The first conciliation hearing took place in a suffocating atmosphere of tension. Ms. Helena and Marcus showed up at the courthouse, accompanied by a lawyer and even strangers, who I later learned were false witnesses. Marcus, sitting opposite me, had lost all the ferocity of the previous night and wore a cold, calculating face. He didn't look at me once, focusing on his papers. When the judge asked about the division of assets and custody, Marcus's lawyer stood up and presented an argument that left me stunned. "Your Honor, my client requests custody of Zola. Mrs. Monroe lacks the moral qualification as a mother. She has committed adultery, neglected her home, and currently has no stable income or fixed residence, living off borrowed time at her parents' house." I jumped up and shouted, "That's a lie! He's the adulterer. He has another woman and even a child with her." Miss Helena immediately intervened, pointing her finger at me. "Don't scream. Don't say stupid things. My son is a decent man. Who knows what kind of man you've been sleeping with while you claim to be working day and night? I have proof here." She threw a wad of blurry photos onto the table, showing me having lunch and coffee with a business partner. The photos, taken secretly, were cleverly angled to look intimate. They had even hired a stranger to pose as my lover and testify that we had been seeing each other secretly for 2 years. My blood boiled. They not only wanted to take my daughter away, but to completely destroy my reputation. They wanted to turn me into an unfaithful woman to justify throwing me out and keeping my assets. As for the fortune, Marcus claimed that all the family savings came from his work and that my salary was barely enough for my personal expenses. He brazenly denied that Ms. Helena had managed my entire salary for the last 5 years. I looked at Marcus and Ms. Helena with a nausea that rose in my throat. How could anyone be so vile? Not content with devouring my flesh, they now wanted to drink every last drop of my blood. But they had forgotten one thing. I am a businesswoman. I could endure it for my family. But when cornered, I know how to defend myself. I took a deep breath and signaled to my lawyer. He calmly opened his briefcase and presented the crucial evidence I had secretly gathered. First, regarding the adultery accusation, we presented the security camera recordings from the company, showing that those meetings were work-related and always in the presence of other colleagues. We also presented the recording of that night's argument, where Marcus admitted to having a child with Savannah, and Ms. Helena's voice was heard kicking me out of the house. The false witness, after a few questions from my lawyer, stammered, became nervous, and finally confessed that they had paid him $300 to act. Second, regarding the assets, we presented bank statements for the last 5 years. Although Ms. Helena asked me for the money in cash, my company deposited the salary into my account. I proved that the periodic withdrawals coincided with the dates when she made deposits into her savings account, the passbook of which I had also secretly photographed. Most importantly, the deed for the wedding gift land explicitly stated an exclusive donation to my daughter, Aria, and was notarized before the marriage. Legally, it was separate property. Marcus was not entitled to even an inch of that land. The court, after examining the evidence, dismissed all of Marcus's ridiculous petitions. It granted me custody of Zola and ordered Marcus to pay monthly child support. The land was recognized as my separate property. As for the savings, having handed them over in cash, I could not recover them due to lack of proof that Ms. Helena managed them on my behalf. I lost 5 years of salary, but I saved my daughter and my honor, and that was the greatest victory. Upon leaving the courthouse, Ms. Helena, pale with rage at not having gotten the land, insulted me. "Go ahead. Consider it a donation from me. Do you think things will go well for you after leaving your husband? You'll see how you live miserably all your life, hugging that child." Marcus looked at me with hatred. "You think you're so smart, but don't think you've won. Without me, you're just a divorced woman with a burden. What man is going to look at you?" I looked directly into the eyes of mother and son and smiled proudly. "Thank you for your concern. Worry about that valuable mistress of yours and her wonderful son instead. For me, leaving that house is a blessing." I hugged my daughter and got into the car. I left behind their faces disfigured by greed and hatred. The gate of hell had closed. A new world was opening before me. Although the road ahead was full of thorns, at least I could breathe the air of freedom. 3 months, 90 days. It's not a long time, but for someone who knows how to rise from the abyss, it's enough time to completely change their destiny. The first days after the divorce were very hard. I rented a small apartment to live with my daughter, taking on the role of both father and mother and the economic responsibility. At night, while sleeping with my daughter in my arms, I often wet the pillow with tears of sadness for the still open wounds in my heart. Marcus's betrayal and Ms. Helena's cruelty tormented me even in my dreams. But every morning, seeing the innocent smile of my daughter, Zola, I promised myself, "You cannot break down. You cannot let your enemies rejoice at your misfortune. The sweetest revenge is not insults or fights, but living a life 1,000 times happier and brighter than when you were with them." I threw myself into work like a maniac. With my experience and skills, and no longer constrained by domestic problems, my concentration sharpened, and I quickly regained my professional worth. I secured 3 major contracts in a row for the company. I earned the recognition of my superiors and was promoted to marketing director, doubling my salary. With the money, I started investing in myself. I cut my long, neglected hair and exchanged it for an elegant bob cut. I threw away the old, baggy clothes that Ms. Helena forced me to wear and replaced them with elegant office suits that highlighted my long, hidden figure. I started practicing yoga, taking care of my skin, and learning to apply light makeup. In the mirror was a completely different Aria, young, sophisticated, and full of life. My eyes, previously clouded by sadness, now shone with confidence and charisma. Colleagues and men from associated companies began to look at me with admiration and approach me, but I was not in a hurry. I fully enjoyed the happiness of being a proud, single woman. While my life shone brighter and brighter across town, Marcus and his family's life began its decline. Through some mutual friends, vague rumors reached me that Marcus was in serious trouble. After the divorce, Marcus proudly brought Savannah to live in his house, as if they were husband and wife. Ms. Helena, delighted, treated her new daughter-in-law, pregnant with the heir, like a queen. But the good times did not last. Marcus invested all his savings and borrowed money from friends to open a fancy restaurant to Savannah's taste. She imagined a future where she would sit as the owner, moving only a finger to count the money. But Savannah was all facade. She was ignorant and lazy. Instead of controlling the quality of the food, she squandered money on decoration and luxury purchases. 2 months after the opening, the restaurant was empty. The food was bad, the staff unfriendly, and customers stopped going. The capital ran out, and the interest from the bank and the loan sharks began to crush Marcus. To top it all off, misfortune also struck at his main job. Distracted by the restaurant's problems and his mistress's whims, he neglected his responsibilities and made a serious mistake on an important contract, causing major losses to the company. He was reprimanded by his superiors, demoted to a lower position, and his salary was cut in half. Due to money problems, the atmosphere in Ms. Helena's 4-story house became suffocating. Laughter about a bright future was no longer heard at the table, only sighs and arguments. Once I casually ran into Marcus at the supermarket. He was pushing Savannah's shopping cart. He was haggard, with a messy beard and worn clothes. Savannah, next to him, frowning, kept scolding him because he couldn't buy her the expensive imported grapes she wanted. Upon seeing me, his ex-wife, in a striking red dress, high heels, a designer handbag, and laughing happily with my daughter, Marcus was so surprised that he dropped the carton of milk he was holding. He stared at me. Surprise, regret, and shame mingled in his eyes.